guys. What's new? Just back for the weekend, longer. 2 weekends. Pick up your Hebrew calendar. What? Your Hebrew calendar. Thank you. Hey, John. Oh. Hey, Don. All right. Ethan, can you fire me up? All right. Susanna busy? Is her friend coming back?
No, but a different one.
Oh, okay. Good morning, church family and friends.
Good morning.
Everyone here in person at 1080 East LaSalle Street. This is the Mountain View Church of Christ. And welcome to everyone who is tuned in on the Zoom channel, and also you can tune in to the YouTube channel as well. This is our 7th lesson in a series of sacred altars and holy sacrifices. And we're going to be talking about the Lord of Sabbath, of the Sabbath. Our main text will be out of Matthew 12, 1 through 14. Also, you can cross-reference that in Mark 2, 22 to 38, and Luke 6, 1 to 11. The term or the phrase, the Lord of the Sabbath, is found in verse 8 of Matthew 12, verse 28, Mark 2, and verse 5 of Luke 6. Wait, what are we talking about? Have you ever been in a conversation where you ask that question? You know, hey, wait a minute, what are we talking about here? Well, I've had that, haven't you? You took the wrong end of the stick. I remember doing things like that when we were in Scotland on the mission field. Many of our human disagreements turn out to be about values, whether or not we acknowledge that reason. And sometimes the disagreement is actually not a big deal, but at the time it feels like a big deal. Jesus, in particular, knew how to take a conversation and how to reveal what was in a person's heart. The Bible says that Jesus knew men's hearts, and that was why he didn't put a lot of trust in them. Of course, he picks out 12 men who are his inner core of disciples who would become apostles, save one. That was Judas Iscariot. This conversation that we're going to be studying today comes about during a Sabbath, on a Saturday. And so Jesus turns the discussion around and he reveals the true motives of his objectors. That is, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the teachers of the law. Those who were responsible for keeping the oral traditions alive, and also they were supposed to be the keepers, the guardians of the law. Jesus was more interested in talking about showing mercy. Remember that word, mercy. At the same time, he had some sweeping claims that left everyone wondering, who is this person who calls himself the Son of Man and the Lord of the Sabbath? Who does he think he is? That's what they were saying. In the mind of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they saw God as the Lord of the Sabbath. Exodus 20 and also Deuteronomy chapter 5, it states plainly that the Sabbath belongs to the Lord. It was his gift to man. It was his gift to the people of God, his gift to Israel. That there would be rest for the body, that there would be rest from work on one day. Remember the Sabbath day and what? Make it holy, keep it holy. Also, during Jubilee years, the land was given a rest. On a Sabbath, a regular Sabbath, the Jew would not be working, and his animals would be given rest, except for you have to keep on milking them cows and milking the goats. Just think what would happen if you missed a milking of a goat or a cow for one day. They would be in serious pain. So they're saying, who gave him the right to do such things, as we'll talk about in the text today? So let's get right into the lesson. I'm pretty sure during our lifetimes, when our words or our actions were misunderstood by others, one of the things that fire up this criticism of Jesus and his disciples, they're walking through a field, and the disciples are hungry, and it's a field full of ripe, ready to be harvested wheat, grain. And when they pluck those ears of corn and they start to blow the chaff away, and they're doing like this, to the Pharisee and the Sadducee and the keepers of the law, that was breaking the Sabbath day. And you got to remember this. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And the Pharisees had it all turned around. They were focusing in on all the things you shouldn't be doing, and that seemed to be blocking their showing mercy to others. So, is there anyone here this morning, even out in Zoom land, who might like to share about a time when you felt misunderstood or criticized, even when you believed you were doing the right thing? Anyone have an experience like that? Raising teenagers. No, I didn't mean that. Well, what did you mean? And sometimes it's our teenagers who fire back at us. So what do you mean? So, why do you think it's a lot easier to criticize, to judge, to be judgmental of others, rather than extending to them some mercy? Come on. Why is it easier to do that than to show mercy? Linnell says it's easier to be negative. Yeah.
It protects yourself when you put it on others.
Yeah, you show the spotlight onto them and away from you.
Because I think I'm right.
And yeah, and we're so sure that we're right. And the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they are no exception. Jesus often did things on a Sabbath that upset the apple cart, if you will. And he had a reason for doing it. If he was doing it just to pull their chain, I don't think Jesus would do that. But I think he would do things on the Sabbath because he saw a need for something to be done on that particular day to that particular person. Yes?
I also think he used that to teach them and the people that are observing what's happening. It teaches them that he has authority.
Yes.
Also, that they should have a little more lenience.
Yes. The Pharisees, they knew and understood what mercy meant, but they weren't very good about extending it. They were good about extending it within their own group, but not to somebody that they saw as a threat. Jesus was a threat. He didn't go to rabbi school. One of the things we talked about in this series was when Jesus was up at the temple, he was 12 years of age, if you will recall, and he was amazing. The old rabbis, the people up at the temple, the wise, and they were just wondering, where did this young man, where did this young boy, to be 12, to be 13 is like when you become an adult in some ways. You're still young, but you're old enough to be part of a minyan. A group of 10. You were old enough to do certain things. You were not old enough to serve at the temple during the sacrifices because you had to be of a certain tribe. And what tribe was that? The Levi. I wonder if the Levites would have bought Levi's. Just thought I'd... Yeah. So, observing a 7-day week that included one day of rest, a Sabbath, was a distinctive practice of Israel. The Sabbath was, as I said, a gift that God gave to man or to Israel through the law of Moses. Remember in, I think it's John 1 and 17, the law came by Moses, but Jesus, he came and gave us what? Grace And what else? One more. Mercy, yes. So it was to commemorate the mighty acts of God. A Sabbath was set to commemorate God's mighty acts. For instance, when God rested on the seventh day after all the work he did. And the second thing was when God liberated his people from the oppression in the land of Egypt and set them on their way where they would be free. Land of Egypt was a place where they were not allowed to rest. They were to be worked all the time. So, hey Ralph, did you get your moving thing installed? Anyway, it's good to see you, both of you. All right. Well, I'll come over when you get it, and I want to try it out. So, the keeping of the Sabbath had been a controversial topic for centuries, even by the time we get to the days when Jesus walked on this earth. The Pharisees of Jesus' day responded by emphasizing meticulous observances of the Sabbath. So, their oral Torah, the Torah is the first 5 books, or the Pentateuch rather is the first 5 books. The oral Torah, the traditions passed down by word of mouth, had amplified the regulations that prevented a person from even coming close to breaking the commandments. It was airtight. You could hardly do anything. Such traditions defined what constituted work. For instance, you could carry an olive branch and it would not be considered as work. But if it was a big branch, that was work. So, there's possibly like a field full of wheat. And the disciples are going to walk through that field and they're hungry.
I wonder, where were the Pharisees that they were watching someone out in the big middle of...
They had roving camels. I don't know, but when they come out of that field, somebody saw them and went and told the Pharisees. Or maybe they were parked right outside. You never know. So, we're going to talk about the Lord of the Sabbath. There's your references. Our key text today, Matthew 12, 1 through 8, and also the other references, Mark 2 and Luke 6. Jesus is going to claim that he is the Lord of rest, the Lord of the Sabbath. There was the question of lawfulness. There was, the Lord and his disciples, they were hungry, and so they were having a wee snack on the Sabbath. If it was on any other day, it would be okay with the Pharisees, but not on this day. The offended teachers and keepers of the law are found in verse 2. We'll go there just in a moment. No work on the Sabbath. So the disciples, they got hungry. There was no McDonald's or anything out there. Or let's go healthy, there was no modern market. The Pharisees caught them breaking the law, according to Exodus 28 through 11. Don't you know they had that down pat? They were able to quote it backwards and forwards. because God had commanded rest on the Sabbath, and rebellion would not be tolerated. Read your Numbers 15. Was it really work picking a few ears of wheat and doing that and then popping them into your mouth? Isaiah 58 sheds some light on God's will for the Sabbath day. Check it out for yourself, Isaiah 58, 13 to 14. I tell you what, Mike, could you look that up, please? Isaiah 58, 13 to 14. Actually, what was happening here, Jesus and his disciples were breaking the Pharisees' laws. The Pharisees ignored having obedient, rebellious hearts and created a detailed checklist. 39 ways to break the Sabbath. Mike, Isaiah 58, 13 to 14.
If you turn back your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, and the holy day of the Lord honorable, if you honor it, not going your own ways, or seeking your own pleasure, or talking idly, then you shall take delight in the Lord, and I will make you ride on the heights of the earth. I will feed you with the heritage of Jacob my father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken.
Sabbath day ought to be also a day for contemplation. It's like, be still and know that I am God. It's going to worship God. It is doing certain things. It's honoring God. But the Pharisees had the people all tied up in knots because of their 39 regulations that they had come up with. Through time, it was 39. Here are some of them. Well, all of them. No sowing, no plowing, no reaping, no binding, no gathering sheaves, no weaving. Sorry, Judith. No weaving. No spinning. No dyeing wool. Whew. No flaying. No cutting to the hide to shape. No marking hides, scraping hides. You know, and on and on and on and on it went. 39 ways to break the Sabbath. This was not God's doing. This was man's doing. And there's a big difference. You know, we try to improve on what God says or what God does. And what does man end up doing? Messing everything up. So, who or what is greater than? We'll look at verses 3 through 8. Talks about David. You know, the Pharisees were real touchy about David. And I bring up David because it talks about David and some of his soldiers are hungry, and they go into the tabernacle. I think it's 1 Samuel 21. And they eat what? The showbread, the flatbread, you know, the pita bread. I don't know. It kind of looks like that. And God did not burn them to cinders. Then Jesus talks about the temple. He says, there is something here greater than the temple. Oh, don't you dare talk about our temple. You could what? Talk about the gold on the temple, but not about the temple itself, because that is whose residence? God's place. So, Verse 7 talks about a sacrifice. There is something here that is greater than David, greater than the temple, greater than a sacrifice. Boy, he's really racking up criticism here. And the answer would be the Son of Man is the one who is greater. Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. But I've got something to say. If you look at Matthew 12, verses 41 and 42, you will see a similar phrase, but phrased something differently. There is not something greater than Solomon, someone greater than Solomon, someone greater than Jonah is here. And if you read your book of Hebrews, there is someone who is greater than Moses. Whoa. So there's a possible secondary answer. Another answer, in addition to the Son of Man being the Lord of the Sabbath, I'll give you an example. He's claiming to be the Lord of the Sabbath. He is in charge. Who's been in charge or should have been in charge? God, but God's voice is not being heard. Whose voices are being heard more than God? The Pharisees and the Sadducees. So the other answer, the secondary answer, is something is greater than David, the temple, and sacrifice, and that is extending mercy. In my sermon today, I will be talking almost about those similar concepts on to be like Jesus. And one of the things that I have learned about Jesus is, yes, he was full of grace and truth. The Pharisees like to manipulate the law to suit themselves. So, verses 3 and 5. Let's go ahead and just open up your Bibles. Matthew 12, 1 through 8. I'll start, and then I'll read a verse. There's only 12 of them. We'll get through them real quick. Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and started to eat them. Okay, Royce, could you read verse 2, and Sandy, verse 3?
But when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Behold, your disciples are doing what is not permitted to do on the Sabbath."
He said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry, and those who were with him?"
Okay, so he's given as good, he's answering, he is combating their objections with questions. Jesus often answers a question, takes a question, and then puts another question back at the giver. Okay, Bev, could you read verse 4, please?
He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priest.
Oh yeah, the priest could eat that bread. But when it was in the tabernacle or in the temple, it was the bread of presence. It was not that God is being fed. It was there to remind the priest, the high priest, about his duties and to keep this day as holy. David ate the bread of presence. Verse 5. Mike.
Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are guiltless?
You know, in the process, what are they doing in the tabernacle? What are they doing in the temple? They're doing work. They're doing God's work. And every time they're there, they are actually breaking the Sabbath by doing certain things. Verse 6, Bev.
I tell you that one greater than the temple is here.
Okay, now in that translation it says what? One? In a lot of the other translations that I've been looking at, there is something is in the text. But let me tell you, if you look and know your Greek, there's no something. But there is a principle here about who is the Lord of the Sabbath and what should be applied and extended to all. Michelle, could you read verse 6?
Of 12.
Yeah.
But I say unto you that here is one greater than the temple.
And go ahead and read 7 since Bev read verse 6.
Wherefore, if ye knew what this is, I will have mercy and not sacrifice. Ye would not have condemned the innocents.
And go ahead and finish.
For the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath.
Whoa. Now, I'm going to include today verses 9 down through 21 because you need to see it as a whole package to put it all into context. Because later past 21 and down to 41 and 42, he says, there is someone greater than Solomon here. Solomon was the builder of the temple, right? And he talked about someone being greater than Jonah. So, what does all of this have to do with anything? Well, according to the Pharisees' checklist system, David was to be condemned for eating. They lifted David up as mostly perfect. You know, aren't we mostly perfect when we came into the kingdom? And our perfection is not yet concluded. We are moving towards perfection. We are being perfected, if you know your book of Hebrews. So, why did God allow David to eat that bread without condemning him? Whoa! How are the priests able to profane the Sabbath every week? Because they didn't want the bread to sit there for another Sabbath, and it wouldn't be offerable to God. So the priests got to do what? They ate the bread after all the doings, and also they worked. You're not supposed to do any work on the Sabbath. They were breaking it every week on the Sabbath. Now, verses 6 and 8 deal with there is someone or one greater than the temple here, or there is something. As I said, the something is not a Greek expression. Why does Jesus bring up these examples? Well, David is God's anointed, right? The tabernacle was God's dwelling place. Ooh. And the priests are given work that requires them to break the Sabbath. Jesus is greater than the temple David profaned or the tabernacle. This freed him and his disciples, stating their authority and mission. When Jesus said, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath here. You know, if the Lord of the Sabbath could allow his disciples to eat grain on the Sabbath day, the same Lord of the Sabbath is the Lord they put on the cross, is the Lord that said to one thief, today you will be with me in paradise. It is the same Lord who heals on the Sabbath, who gives a blind man born blind back his sight. Jesus does a lot of healing. Chapter 12, he continues to heal regardless of the objections. Why? I would encourage you to look on the other side. I'm going to hold this up. The other side, if you have a copy of the Hebrew calendar, this is important. Okay? This is really important. And what it says is, Jesus heals on the Sabbath. The reference there is Luke 13, 10 to 17. Mark 2 and 27, Jesus did say, the Sabbath was made for humankind, for man, and not mankind or humankind for the Sabbath. Jesus, during the Sabbath, or any other day for that matter, was focusing on the morality that requires personal responsibility, not blind obedience to rules. It was man that put a hedge around God. The Pharisees made it difficult for people to get to God with all the rules and regulations. What they were doing was they were measuring out what? Dill, mint, and cumin, when the weightier matters of the law were being ignored. Religious practices are to serve human need. Being holy, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. There is a principle there that's important. It's all about purity of our mind, not just about the purity. Well, it is to do with the purity of our external actions. So that's in your little printout. I printed about 15. I can't print for everybody, I'm sorry. It's not everybody wants it. So that freed Jesus and his disciples by stating their authority and mission. Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. He is bringing rest while they are focused in on works. The 39 exclusions, the 39 how to break the Sabbath, that gave the Pharisees unauthorized power. Jesus didn't need 39 regulations to authorize his power. His power was being authorized and demonstrated each and every day, including the Sabbath. He could raise the dead on the Sabbath. He could heal on the Sabbath. He could heal on the Monday too and raise the dead on a Monday. But often he would do it on a Sabbath because he wanted to make a point. So, let's just go back here. Something greater than the temple is here. That is verse 6, I believe. I tell you something, or someone is greater than the temple is standing right here. Okay. If you had known, he says, I desire compassion. Some of you also had another word that was quoted in this text, other than compassion or mercy. Who has another translation with the different word? If you had known what these words, this is verse 7, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I desire compassion, not sacrifice. Does anyone have another word besides those two? Kindness. Awesome. Love it. Don't you realize it is God's kindness that is meant to lead you to repentance? That's your Romans 2 and verse 4. If we show kindness, maybe that too will lead others to repent, lead others to confess, lead others to enter the kingdom through baptism. But they were too busy condemning the innocent. What their problem was, they were superficial, it was external, it was all about ritualistic obedience. You know, a legalist enjoys that. Versus being heartfelt, sincere, reverential, serving God in that way, honoring God in that way. Mark 2 and 28, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. And what he is doing is dipping into Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5 to reinforce that. The word Lord means kurios in Greek. It means supreme in authority. Where do you hear that title, say, in another part of the world? The supreme leader. You know, the Ayatollah. North Korea, the dear leader. But the supreme authority and power, one worthy of honor, one worthy of reverence, one who is worthy of respect. Who did the Pharisees see as the Lord of the Sabbath? We already said it was God, but also in a lot of other ways, they were setting themselves up to be the lords of the Sabbath. You know, somebody who takes it upon himself, you know, to make sure that everybody is kept in line. You don't deviate. You don't do this. You don't do that. You know, if we had to remember all those 39 ways of breaking the Sabbath and then some, when would we ever get to worship God? When would we ever get to extend mercy to someone? So, what does mercy look like? As I said, I've included verses 9 through 21. I don't have time to put it through for everyone to read, but I just want you to know that there is a lot more to be said, even past verse 21 down to 41. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And so the question was, is it lawful to heal? You know, we used to have a saying in Kimberling City, Missouri, don't plan on dying on the weekend because there's no doctor available. They were asking, is it lawful for you to heal on the Sabbath? Instead of seeing mercy, what did they see? They saw what? Rebellion in Jesus. He is a Sabbath breaker. Also, they also threw in he is a wine bibber as well. Jesus goes on his way healing. He was healing before chapter 12, and he continues to heal after chapter 12. Matthew points to Isaiah 42 so that we see Jesus as the servant of God. I don't think the Pharisees actually thought of themselves as being servants of God, as the guardians to keep the riffraff out. They built a hedge around God. Jesus is this servant of God. He stands before them being greater than David himself, being greater than the temple, being greater than any sacrifice that is offered up on the altar. Jesus, as Lord of the Sabbath, he's gentle. He's full of mercy. He's compassionate. There's another word. In him, the Gentiles can hope. When Jesus was born, he was the consolation of Israel and a light for the Gentiles. He does not look to condemn, though he has plenty of reason to when you read Isaiah 42, 18 to 21. Now, here is Jesus on the Sabbath. His disciples are picking that. You know, I don't know. How many grains does it take to break the Sabbath? 1. If you pluck it, you've already started working. So he heals a man with a withered hand, 9 through 14 of Matthew 12. He heals a woman 18 years bent over, Luke 13, 10 to 17. And he heals a man born blind, John chapter 9. Because Jesus does not stop because of the traditions of men. Remember that. The Sabbath was God's gift to cause man to take a rest and to concentrate and devote your thoughts, your life, your family towards God. So, here are some of Jesus' arguments. In John 7 and 23, even though it's not to do with our text, but it's an example of how he handled the argument. You practice circumcision on the Sabbath, but condemn me for making an entire man well. No wonder they wanted to crucify him. Luke 13, 15 to 16. Mike, could you read that?
Take care of the needs of your animals to lead them to water, but criticize healing of a woman whom Satan has bound for 18 long years.
And also, you rescue your son or ox who has fallen into a well, but condemn the healing of one suffering from dropsy. I know that's the second bell, but I want to just do one or two more. Mark 2 and 27. Royce, could you read that?
The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath.
The Sabbath was to be for man's spiritual benefit, to honor God and rest his body. It says, not for man to bless the Sabbath. The Sabbath was a blessing to man. So, I'm going to leave you with these thoughts. What would it be like for you to show mercy but not sacrifice during this week that has just started? And here's the digging down. How can you and our congregation improve its extensions of showing mercy to others? There are people that we encounter who are not living the right way. They're not living well. They're not living in honor to God. And you know, rather than hearing objections from us, rather than hearing a judgment from us about them, if there is an opportunity to show kindness and compassion and mercy, should it not come from us who have been so blessed by God? We will stop there. Thank you. Never have enough.